Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn Bradford, and I would like to welcome you to my Left Turn podcast. What is your left turn? Writing a blog, parenting in a different way, letting go of the old because you are aware of something greater. Left turns are choices we can all make. It's about a willingness to step into the unknown in any area of your life, to trust yourself, to risk creating or trying something new. It's about letting your true uniqueness shine. The greatest people who have lived, artists, statesmen, writers, explorers, musicians, have all been people willing to turn left. What capacities do you have that you have not acknowledged? What would your life and the world be like if you were willing to turn left? Welcome, everybody. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and this is another edition of the Left Turn podcast. And I have an absolutely amazing woman here, Rachael O'Brien, who does, like, in this reality, she would be described as an overachiever. But being the good humanoid she is, she just keeps creating. She's a transformational life coach and a certified facilitator with Access Consciousness. She facilitates some of the specialties, including Right Relationship for You, Joy of Business, X-Men, Talk to the Entities, and she's a 3-day body class facilitator, and she has 3 kids. I'm like, oh my goodness, do you ever sleep? She travels the world doing workshops. She's inspired to create a world that nurtures talent, makes the impossible possible, and empowers people to create the money doing what they love. Her commitment to a future of possibilities and living life as an adventure is what wakes her up in the morning. I love that, living life as an adventure. She's also the co-author of an international bestseller, Dancing as the Body of Consciousness. This lady is a true gift to the world and the planet. And thank you so much for joining me, Rachael. I'm just thrilled.
I'm just thrilled to know you, Marilyn. Maybe you don't even know this. I remember sending you a message probably 10 years ago when I picked up your book. And your book actually revolutionized the way that I lived my life. I'm not sure that you might even know this, but I was actually in Alcoholics Anonymous when I read that book.
I did not know that. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I remember reading the book and I just knew that it was a different way of recovery. And I was fed up of saying, my name is Rachael and I'm an alcoholic. I was really fed up of it. I was fed up of what it meant for me and for my future. And I read your book and it changed the way that it just changed everything for me. It really, I reckon Right Recovery for You will be there as an entity a long time after you, my friend.
Wow, that is just one of the kind. I really appreciate you saying that.
It's
Thank
true.
you.
It's
Thank you.
true for me. In case you guys haven't picked up the book, it actually talks about addiction in a way that all addiction is a disconnection from your body, and you cannot actually be in addiction if you don't judge, you know. And when I read that part, I had always this weird point of view because I'm so different and I'm so energetically sensitive. And so I had this like weird, the only way I can describe it is like I didn't belong anywhere and that there was something radically wrong with me. Did my mom adopt me? like, like
From another planet.
yeah, am I part of this family? And I knew my mother couldn't have adopted me because she was actually a single parent in the 70s in Ireland, which was very rare, you know? And so I came from a long line of people who actually were very different and had massive abuse in regard to their difference instead of the celebration of the difference that we be. And I guess your podcast is addressing that for all of us freaks. I'm a super freak and I'm totally okay with that now.
Yes. And
Yeah.
who or what would define you as a freak rather than a genius?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I suppose I know now that I'm very different, and for a long time I tried to cut off energetic awareness and the energetic world of consciousness, and I'm one of these people who talks to ghosts as well.
Mhm.
And so I had shut down all of those capacities and abilities to be smart according to this reality and get intelligent and somewhat get some validation of me, you know? And so before Access, I was like your people pleaser. I was like a pretzel, like, let me help you, let me save you. My job, my main role was looking to look after people, save people. And I was raised for that role, really. And then everything beyond that role was me, which I
Mhm.
had to go back, and I suppose I had to start from scratch. I had to scrap everything that I thought was true
Yeah.
and really start to build like an awareness of me beyond all the judgments, the decisions. The Irish, very raised in an Irish Catholic family, we're a
Mhm.
family first, you know, raised in a family where if you talked about the family outside of the family, it was betrayal. So
Right.
a
Wow.
lot of like covert, closed family systems, like, yeah. Mm.
Well, and you just perfectly described the journey for many people who are so different and who are brilliant beyond, it's really brilliant beyond what this reality can comprehend.
Totally.
And then finally, at some point, we go, you know what? I'm going to trust me. I'm going to know what's true for me. And that takes us way beyond on this journey into consciousness. And that's what the left turns are all about.
Yeah.
And I get that you've made many in your life, and particularly starting out from a very conservative background. So I'd love to hear about some of them, any of them.
I'm just looking at, I suppose my first left turn was, and you know, when you come onto a podcast and you don't recognize where you've made different choices, and then
Yes.
we start to have a conversation, and what's normal to me, like even when you were reading my, you know, my bio, what's normal to me is of course you would choose something different, of
Yeah.
course there's something greater available, you know. And so I suppose my first left turn was, I was 17 and I went off to London because I wanted to build a new life.
Amazing.
I am. I tried to run away from home as such. It's such a cute story of a 17-year-old that was like stuck in this very rigid family structure, and she wanted to get away and create a new life. The thing about it though, I couldn't sustain my left turns until I met the tools of access consciousness. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. We don't have the tools. We're not given the tools to be us. We're not encouraged in any way to trust that we know that we know. We're encouraged to support the family, the church, the culture, all of that. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Uh,
Mm.
many of my left turns came once I got into access. Like, wow, and this tool and this tool and this tool.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at myself at 17 years of age, knowing that the structure, that, you know, the culture, the work
Mhm.
environment, none of it was, I'm going to say it didn't invite me to any enthusiasm of I'm alive.
Right.
Like this morning, I drank my cup of coffee and there was a squirrel outside of my house, and he was running along the, you know, he was running along the fence of next door. And none of what people were living around me invited me to that like curiosity of living, or
Right,
the joy of living. So I went off to London, and remember, one of the tools we talk about is your point of view creates your reality.
right.
I still didn't change my point of view. So
Oh,
here am I still living from, at the time my name is Rachael O'Flynn because that's actually my maiden name. And here I am with the same points of views, that I'm not good enough, that
uh-huh.
you know, no matter what I did in my life before access, I was never enough. I was never good enough according to my point of view. So I was the one
Right.
that was. I was the one that was limiting me. I was the one that was, I suppose, discriminating against myself, so to speak.
Well, it's like the swan constantly being judged by the sparrow. And, why aren't you living a sparrow's life? Yeah.
Totally. And so I went home after London because my mom got sick, and that's what you do when you're Irish and blah, blah, blah. And so I had all these like awarenesses of choices that were available to me. I just couldn't sustain them because I didn't have the difference. My favorite question is, what is the energy that you would like to have as your life and living? You
I'm
know?
just making a note.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And so I didn't have the tools to, what do you know about living? Whoever's listening to this podcast, whether it's now or in the future, what do you know about living that nobody else does? You
Yes.
know?
Beautiful. Yes.
And so for me, we we've become very accustomed to living rich lives and having rich conversations. Like you're around the tools a lot longer and practicing the tools of access consciousness a lot longer than me. And so what I find with us is we have this ability to have very engaging, enriching conversations that
Yes.
some people may never have access to, that intimacy and that gratitude that
Yes.
we have available with each other, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much pull from forces and this and that to come back to this reality. So being vigilant, and I mean, I think that was incredibly courageous of you to go to London at 17, even if it didn't last. That's amazing
Yeah.
because you knew you desired more. And that's one of the things about left turns. It's people who know there's more and desire more and are going to create more, but sometimes starting out don't have the tools to help them do that.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And I suppose the big difference about left turns, and this is for me,
Yeah.
it's my left turns now are basically me following the energy of
Yes.
what I would like to have in my life, in the world that I live in. So one of my practices is I get up every morning and I look out at the trees and I look at, well, what would I like to have as my life? What are the things that,
Nice. Yeah.
what are the things that enrich me? What are the things that bring me that joy of living, that smile, that conversation? And I suppose I'm very clear now, and I wasn't, for people that may just be starting their journey into becoming aware of what they would like to have as their life and living. I wasn't actually present with what I would like to create as my life. My point of view was I am the effect of everything that I'm aware of. I am
Mhm.
impacted by other people's behaviors, other people's thinking. I'm super autistic. So I hear other people's mental chatter. And then I thought the mental chatter that I was aware of was me.
Mhm. Right. Who does this belong to? Another great tool.
Exactly. And so now I'm very clear on I would like to live in a world where we have honor and respect for bodies.
Yeah.
And actually, instead of, and I've a couple of things that I'm super, I suppose that I'm super grateful for, that I do, and for anyone listening that is in Alcoholics Anonymous or in any recovery program, I'm not at all disrespecting or dishonoring the program, and because it did work for me. What I'm saying is that I required something beyond the box of
Yes.
limitation and the definition of Rachael only as an alcoholic, Rachael only as someone who is troubled, or, you know, and so I required something greater than that for me, you know.
Yes.
And so this left turn, one of my biggest left turns was actually not going to AA anymore. That was it was one of my biggest left turns, because my point of view was I'm dependent on this group for me to stay well, you know. And so it's so interesting that now I know that I have a choice in whether I abuse my body or not. And I genuinely, Marilyn, did not know that. I thought that I had a problem, that I was always going to be abusive to my body, that I had no choice in regard to my body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now that takes courage to become aware of that and take action. And I had a similar thing. I was in AA for 17 years.
Mm.
And I remember the last time I went to a meeting and I said, "Hi, my name is Marilyn. I've been addicted to anti and unconsciousness, and I'm making different choices now." And that was so liberating.
Totally. And so when you say that, I would love everyone to know that you're not committed to a life of you being a problem forever,
Exactly. Exactly.
that actually you have a choice. And I suppose one of the most beautiful things in the world is to, and it's actually very uncommon, Marilyn, is to truly care for yourself, stand up for yourself, and have your own back. We
Yes.
It
That's a
seems.
left turn in itself, to care for yourself, to stand up for yourself, and to have your own back. That is not what this reality and people tell us we should be doing.
Totally. And so there are choices that I've made where I really had to pull away from the crowd.
Uh-huh.
And, Shannon O'Hara, who we both know,
Yeah.
she talks about the power of aloneness. And one of the things that I had like a massive, probably that whole tribal Irish thing, I did have this thing of like, I can't be on my own. I can't be on my own. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. A few years ago, my youngest of my three kids went to college, and I sat the kids down and I said, "Hey, I'm going to move abroad for a bit," and they were like, "Go,"
Oh,
like
nice.
they were like, "Go," and so I remember making that choice and having 2 years on my own. I was
Mhm.
still facilitating access consciousness
Yeah.
and creating my life. As such, though, I didn't have all the distractions of helping people, you know, putting people's needs and wants ahead of, hang on a second, what would I like to choose here?
Yes.
And so I found myself in this place where I was very addicted to, to fulfilling other people's needs as a distraction from creating my own life and the way I would like to live.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's another thing that we're taught to do. You should put yourself last. You should not be in the equation of your life. You're here
Mm,
to serve others, and what we forget is the beings that have made the biggest difference in the world, whether it's Mahatma Gandhi or Picasso or anybody like that. They chose for what was true for them. They're
oh,
like kings and queens of left turns. Yeah,
I adore that. They chose what was true for them, you
yeah,
know? And choosing what's true for you. Like one of my undesired truths was I'm actually really powerful, but I was pretending to be pathetic.
can't imagine you as pathetic, Rachel. That's like a beyond for me. But I know we all have these ways that when we were not in contact with who we truly be, when we were judging the being different as wrong rather than being an incredible gift of uniqueness, we
Mm.
would go to that pathetic state.
Yeah, yeah. And now pathetic, it's just not, it was something that I grew up with. When we talk about like females and males, I grew up in a culture where the woman was looked after the man. I was born in the 70s. That might seem, for my
Yeah.
kids now, even they were born in the 90s,
Mhm.
that's like hundreds of years ago, that concept
Exactly.
where you get married to be financially looked after by somebody, like you would become codependent on someone else, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah,
And so for them, that's like a foreign concept, because now we live in a society where you actually are responsible for yourself.
yeah,
So it's it's just been such a huge shift in awareness. And one of the things I particularly enjoy is that, and this is like, we're having a big conversation today, but one of the things that you could have a takeaway from this conversation is that my relationship with Rachel isn't put through anybody else anymore, you know?
That's beautiful. I've never heard it said that way. That's just lovely.
Mm.
Yeah. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so when you look at consciousness, and so consciousness is receiving everything and judging nothing. And so there's this universe of energy available that none of us really even know the magnificence of. We've
Yeah.
touched it, we've received it, we've received the beauty. And so my relationship is about what am I capable of instead of the points of views, the judgments, the limitations, you know? And I know I was quite dependent on other people's points of views or opinions.
Mhm.
Whereas now, let's say if I say to you, hey Marilyn, I'm looking at creating this project
Mhm.
my business, and I'll talk to you about it, and you would say, that sounds really light, or there's something really expansive in that. I'm not dependent anymore for someone to approve of what I generate. I
Yes.
have I have a different navigation with energy that's allowed me to know what's true for me.
That's just lovely. Yes, I think we've all been through taking our value from other people's judgments until we go, oh, wait a minute. What's true for me?
Yeah.
I don't need validation from anybody else. And that is such a liberating, and that in and of itself is a huge left turn to get to the space of your life where you don't need validation from anyone. If they give you a judgment or information, you might go, is any of that true for me? Yes, no. But you don't require their validation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. And I get really that's what the journey of consciousness is about for me. It's
Yes.
about me and consciousness, and what that is for me is just to know that I've got this, that I'm okay. Whereas we're brainwashed in every moment of every day to say, oh, you need this, Rachel, or you need that, or you need a man, or you need,
Mhm.
something outside of you to be whole. And it's one of the biggest lies, one of the biggest left turn for me is to know that I don't have a need for anything outside of me, and I can choose.
Yes.
I have choice. And so
Yes.
one of the big things for me was I had this weird point of view that I didn't want to be dependent on someone to be cared for or to be loved,
Mm.
and what it turned out was everywhere you think you're wrong is the opposite of what it appears to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I've always had an ability to pull beautiful people into my life, even since a little girl. Like I have this ability to find the shiny unicorn, the fairy in the schoolyard or wherever in the workplace. And you've everything available to you when you know that you can choose.
Yes.
I've had like really one of the things that's very relevant for me is relationships like this conversation where I'm supported to know that I'm like the Irish part is like that I'm actually that I can be great and that I can have gratitude for myself.
Yes.
And that for me, what if we could create relationships that were left turns, like relationship to normal is separation and judgment, and you shouldn't have done this and blah, blah, blah. Whereas relationship from truly honoring and respecting the person that's with you, I'm grateful that you can spend 2 minutes with them or 5 minutes, or
Yes.
that's a very different experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel. There were so many gems in this. I really appreciate you coming on. And if I were new, this or had been in access, this is a very inspiring conversation. Very inspiring. So thank you
Yay!
very much.
Yay! Thank you for having me, and thanks so much for everything that you've created. And for people listening, consciousness isn't always an easy choice.
No,
And
not.
sometimes our heads can be put on the block and the chopping block of consciousness where we try to separate or we don't allow ourselves to be part of this beautiful journey. And so if you're starting, it is a beautiful journey, and you do have to be very strong to have your own back and never give up and never give in and never.
Yes. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks so much for not quitting.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Left Turn. I wonder what embracing left turns could create in your life. What magical possibilities might show up. Remember, when you choose left turns, you are joining a group of the most creative and brilliant people the world has ever known.